Welcome back, kids. Let's talk about the Ipnysh Sanctuary. I have no idea how to actually pronounce that, but we're going to go with Ipnysh. We're going to call it the new patch for August 13th, 2020 for Archeage Unchained. Let's dig into some details on this. So this patch came out in Korea back in early March. So that puts us about coming on 6 months behind content-wise. Since then, there's been about 3 large content pushes inside of Korea compared to where we are now. So it makes it sound like there's a whole bunch of content coming between now and the end of the year for those of us in North America. So that's exciting news. So the focus of this particular patch is the Misssong Sanctuary, the new dungeon, right? It's a 3 to 5 player dungeon. The minimum is 3, which is instance, or you can get to it from the torch of Ipnysh inside of Aegis. There is no gear score requirement. You can get there 3 times a day. Big question mark there is, can it be reset, similar to Noriet or other those dungeons where you can buy an item for some gold and do it additional times. There are 6 story quests in that dungeon. No idea if there's any gear or any other drops inside of there. The other big dungeon related news out of this patch is the refresh or season 2 of the Misssong Banquet. This has been reduced from 6 players to 3 players, which I think is pretty interesting. Each player has their own path that they're going to need to manage to keep the guys out of the middle. The big new change is that there's cannons in the middle that can be upgraded, and there's some random rounds. I think more than one where the mob spawn will be random, obviously. So you have to be agile enough to deal with that. There's been a number of other changes when it comes to balance of the cannons. Some of that's to make up for the change with the guns in the middle, but we'll have to see how that balance works when that patch rolls out. I'm excited that it's going to be 3 players, so a smaller group will be able to jump in there and do that. There's no indication yet from any of the patch notes if the drops or the rewards will be different. I'm expecting there'll be some changes, obviously, since it's a new season, but we'll wait and see. Some of the other changes are the God Authority skills. There's both active and passive skills. The active skills, there are 3 uses on a 5-minute cooldown with an 18-hour recharge. The notes, the PTS server notes aren't great, but reading into the Korean notes, these are hero-specific skills, but maybe they're not. But if I, read into them, the active skills are, Neb's Ice Field, Jwander's Revenge, Shatagon's Invincibility, and Dahuda's Breeze. The Ice Field creates ice pillars and ice shards that freeze everybody for 5 seconds. That's pretty exciting. Jwander's Revenge is a damage reflection. 200% of damage reflected is reflected back to your attackers, and you only suffer 50%. There's no indication of how long that lasts, but that can be crazy, crazy powerful, especially if you have, during a like a raid break scenario. You can get hold that damage back, especially like things like crashing waves, etc. Very powerful. Same thing with Shatagon's Invincibility. It grants invincibility to everybody within range. Again, how long does that last? The last one is Dahuda's Breeze, which is going to be a very specific naval-related ability, which it creates whirlwinds that forces everybody to experience turbulence and gushing winds. So that's going to be a big thing at sea to dealing with the contested content out there like Leviathan. On the other hand, there's some passive abilities, things like Rampola's Authority, Perdita's Authority, and Warcry. Starting with the easy one, Perdita's Authority, and I'll put all these up on screen to make this pretty easy. Perdita's Authority is, I would consider it's pretty much like a food buff with some extra bonuses. It does not stack with potions and food, so you can't just crank on a really good food buff with this on top of it, but it's doing things like increasing attack power, health, PvE skill damage, reducing received damage, increasing your resilience, toughness, focus, and you have a chance of healing on received hits. So 7% of received hits will turn into health. Pretty nice. Rampolis' authority. That's the big one about there is increasing your honor points gained from Warren quests. That's 30%. And you also get added rewards from arenas, etc. So it's very much a PvP ability. The big thing there is it stacks. It can stack up to 30 times. So every time you have a stack of it, increases received healing, continuous mana regen, restores health, resilience, and toughness. So every stack makes it better. So if you think about 30, you'd end up with like 3,000 toughness, 3,000 resilience. You're getting 30% received health, plus 30 mana regen. It's pretty powerful. Warcry, on the other hand, is another one that stacks from 1 to 30. It does increases your received healing, continuous mana regen, and increases your health based on PvP kills. And this is also doing things like resilience and toughness. Looking at this, it's interesting. The two between the authority and the Warcry buff, they're very, very similar, and I haven't quite figured out why you would want authority over Warcry, Rampolis' authority over Warcry, and vice versa, because they're very similar. So I'm going to wait to see, if this patch note gets updated, etc. But it's something to be aware of. So really cool abilities. Again, the passive ones last for 18 hours, then they reset. Compared to the active ones are definitely more situational, but the passive ones are pretty cool as well. The other big things out of here, with the new patch here coming out on the 13th, is the Immortal Warden gear, which can be upgraded. You can either get it a drop from the new dungeon, or you can upgrade your Disciple gear from the library. So a number of scrolls and other things will be dropping to do that. So that's pretty interesting, and reasons to farm the library. And I'm all about an alternative gear path to the Hiram stuff, because it's there's a lot of sameness, right? So I'm always about an interesting new path and gear to gem up to try. Some other big takeaways from this, the patch are the fact that there's going to be rank 6 Lunacharm gem upgrades. So right now, you could do the tier 3 gem, or a tier 5 Lunacharm on your level 1 gem, but the tier 3 was always a bit better. So if you're really min-maxing, you would go after the tier 3 gem. But there's a huge requirement there when it comes to resourcing. And the Lunacharm path used less resources but uses honor, so it's kind of a choice between the two. So if someone like me that had done some of the Lunacharms that you really weren't willing to pull them out to redo them as tier 3 gems, you just weren't in. Now you can pretty much get equivalent by making a tier 6 Lunacharm, which I think is fantastic. So you basically will have a full alternate path to get to the same level of gear, just using a Lunacharm instead. I haven't seen the exact number of gems it can require, but it's been pretty predictive going from T1 through tier 5 Lunacharm perspective. So I'm sure we can do the math to figure out how many it's going to require. Other things of note, there's a whole bunch of other fixes inside this patch. I'm not going to drill down in all of them. I'll post a link in the notes. But things are damage to siege vehicles. The lesser powered faction, i.e. the one that owns less territories, their siege equipment will do more damage. I think that's pretty interesting. No idea how much, but that will be hopefully cause a little bit more turnover. They're also reducing the payment from specialty and zone packs. That could be pretty substantial depending on how much they actually tweak that. We'll have to wait and see till it actually comes out. The other couple notes that are worth looking into and worth noting is reducing the cost of some of the synthesis and regrades, which can be extraordinarily expensive. So once again, we're going to need to wait to see what those actually look like, but something to be aware of. So that's all I really wanted to cover here. I wanted to give a quick look the unpronounceable sanctuary. I'm hoping somebody will correct me on what that's actually called. There's some really good stuff coming out there. Unfortunately, we didn't get a couple of the things that came out with this patch in Korea, namely the farmhand fairies, I think they're called, but the fairies that assist with planting and gathering resources, which looks really exciting. And there's some future upgrades to them in later patches in Korea, doing things like they're able to run packs, like actually run your cart, among other things. So some really interesting stuff to look forward to, quality of life improvements. So as soon as we get some more information on there, I'll do another video. I might actually just start pulling apart the Korean patch notes and see if I can put together a timeline about where I think some things will come. But I think, you know, September, etc., should be pretty interesting from a content perspective. Because right now, I think I've said in a previous video, the game's in a weird place where the end game content is pretty much user driven, i.e. mostly naval related, but everybody else has kind of hit a bit of a wall. So getting some more content out here is going to be super duper important for keeping people interested, especially as some new content's coming out there, like Shadowlands for WoW, you know, a new large patch for Final Fantasy just released, and ESO has another patch coming. So they need to keep everything fresh to keep stuff going, because we've seen, you know, a decline in people on server, and all the servers actually in North America. So stay tuned, subscribe if you want to hear more. Have a great night.